Hi, it's Chris Gordon, and I hope you're getting excited for this Wednesday and Thursday's face-to-face district health director meeting here in Richmond. We've actually been putting a lot of planning into the second annual district director coordination and strategic planning meeting. It begins on Wednesday at 9 o'clock at the Perimeter Center. Registration opens at 8:30 in the morning. So we look forward to having you there. We'll have lunch and dinner on the first day and lunch on the second day. Breakfast will be provided by your hotels on both mornings, Wednesday and Thursday morning. In advance of this meeting that we have coming up, one of the things we like to do is begin with the end in mind, if you will. And so you'll notice if you look at the agenda that there are sort of three main focus areas that the session is divided into. In the morning on the first day, Wednesday, we actually have discussion about our engagement action plans following the engagement survey. In the afternoon that same day, we have discussions on how to interact, interface, and discuss, meet with your local and state elected and federal officials. And then on the second day, that Thursday, we have discussion about community health improvement and Virginia's plan for well-being and how they integrate with each other. So knowing that we begin with the end in mind, we're actually going to ask you to make three specific commitments, actually based on each of those sessions. And so I'm going to take a moment here and slide out of the way and show you what that means. So the three commitments that we're actually asking or tasking you with is first to take action on 1 to 2 priority items from the engagement survey. So all of the districts, all of the work units, central offices took an engagement survey within the last couple months, and that data has been aggregated for us by Gallagher Group, who was contracted by the Office of Human Resources. They've actually identified what the areas of improvement could be or opportunity, as well as areas that we're doing well in the aggregate. And so John Ringer is actually going to curate this session, and they're going to specifically going to ask you to take action on 1 to 2 priority items from the engagement survey. That's in the morning on the first day. Later that same day, Joe Hilbert's going to curate a session where we're going to talk about how we want to posture ourselves in relation to the elected or the appointed community, both in our local and county governments, our 95 counties, our 38 cities, the 100 delegates, the 40 senators, and then our elected federal officials. What is the posture and the role of the local health district director? And that's where we're going to ask you to make another ask there as well, specifically within 90 days, developing an action plan for communicating with those officials. And then on the last day, just like last year when we met August 30th through 31st, we talked about prioritizing a community health assessment, and every district took that on. As you can see in our CHS Balance Scorecard that we release monthly, you can see the improvement and the engagement across the board. Now we're going to challenge you to do the next step, the Community Health Improvement Plan. That's basically to prioritize and complete an activity over the next year, specific to your CHA and your CHIP. Dr. Oliver and Jeff Stover are going to be curating that session along with John Ringer on the last day. I wanted to take a moment to talk a little bit about that third and final commitment on the last day. We want you to contemplate how resilience can fit into your community health improvement plan. And a lot of people say, well, what is resilience? And they use the analogy of a rubber band and bouncing back and forth, and a tree that bends instead of breaks in the wind or the snow. And it's actually very similar to that. But when we talk about communities, it adds another layer, and it's how the community responds to stressors. Most of the time, people contemplate that in terms of an emergency, some sort of natural disaster, for instance. And that's typically how it's been described. However, when you transition that to a population health approach, what does that look like? And so when we talk about community capacity to respond to stressors, there's three levels that you can look at that. The first being the absorptive capacity. That's a measure, a community response measure, where you might see and evaluate what is their preparedness. What are their informal safety nets in that community? What type of social cohesion or connectivity exists in your community? That's what is their ability to absorb a stressor. Intuitively, your gut probably tells you that, but more than likely, your community health assessment and the data you collect will actually help to make an informed decision. The second responsive measure is adaptive capacity. So that's looking at how can the community adapt once the stressor has been presented. How does it adapt to that? And you look at the engagement and mobilization of the private sector in that, aspirations of the community, what they want to be, and the diversity of the livelihoods of the members of the community that are present. Another response measure is the last one listed there. It's the transformative capacity. That's actually moving forward. So instead of bouncing back, it's bouncing forward after a stressor, for instance. And things like government transparency and accountability, and we're in luck, all of you are local health district directors for the government. You have major control over that. How are we making decisions as a community, as a public health agency? And that also goes hand in hand with improvements in communication networks. And formal safety nets, transitioning from informal safety nets. And a lot of that has to do with something called deep democracy. And that's a concept where people that are affected by decisions make those decisions because they have to live with the consequences. So essentially they own it. So think about that for a moment. You've just finished completing over the last year a community health assessment where you tried to gauge or understand what the public health needs and priorities are, and not only public health needs, what the community priorities and needs are over the last year. You've just done that. So you know what the issues are in your community. So what we're asking you to do now, if you apply that concept of deep democracy, then what you're doing is you're asking them to make a collective decision with you. You're not making this decision for the community, but with the community, the partners, the folks that you've worked with over the last year. And that's what we want you to contemplate when you think about and move forward with your commitment plan for your community health improvement plan over the next year. So I hope this has given you a couple minutes of thought about it. We're going to include actually a white paper to attach out to this email as well when we send this out. So think about that as you're getting ready to come to Richmond tomorrow or Wednesday morning. And we hope that we have some really thoughtful discussion about all of these. Thanks a lot. Bye.